Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. This is Life List, a birding podcast. I am George Armstead here with my co-host, Alvaro Jaramillo. Alvaro, how you doing today, pal?
Pretty good. You did like birding podcast. Like you're starting
Impressive.
that kind of. Yeah,
I'm rolling the R's at every opportunity.
Right. Yeah. It's like just like wow. It's like this really professional. I love it.
Yeah. Well, that's what we strive for here. You know. So, yeah. Well, I'm going to try rolling my R's on another name. We have a very special guest with us that we've been trying to get on here for a long time. Keeps pretty busy, a winner of the Tropic Bird, the American Birding Association's Lifetime Achievement Award, Jen Brumfield. Spreads the joy. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Spreads the joy of urban and local patch birding in Cleveland and well beyond, running thrilling boating trips on the open waters of Lake Erie, seeking rarities on the lake and around local migrant traps. Jen wanders widely with unique determination. A veteran of big days and big years, JB has participated in the World Series of Birding, the Great Texas Birding Classic, and completed multiple record-setting big years in Cuyahoga County. Long a naturalist working in education for Cleveland Metro Parks, JB now works for Cleveland Metro Parks Natural Resources Department, is also an artist and a tour leader, a rarity-finding machine who loves hawk watching and sea watching. Due to JB's unique voice and energy, you will find few, if any, more respected, talented, admired, and adored birders anywhere in North America. Welcome to the show, Jen Brumfield.
That was wild.
Right.
That was absolutely wild. Show's over. I mean, that was it. That's all I've got. That was
There's
it in a
nothing
nutshell.
else to say.
Boom. Nothing else. Birds.
Nice.
Oh,
How you
joy
doing
to
today,
be
Jen?
here.
Where are you at?
Cleveland. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah,
wrapped
so
up a
unusual.
full day in the field.
Nice. Well, we're super glad to have you here. Been a goal to get you on the show for a while. So
This is a total blast. I can't believe we're all sitting down right now. We're actually sitting in rooms with our butts on a seat. I mean,
Must be
usually
July.
we'd be out in the field. It is July. Indeed. Not a whole lot happening. Exactly. But actually, I mean, there's still a lot happening. We've got dowitchers moving through right now, and kingbirds are ripping, and orioles are getting ready to depart. So this is when you got to get some sleep. This is
That's
when
right.
you sleep. You rest
up.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. I had my first migrant here in the new yard, the greater yellowlegs. Flew over. I didn't see it. I just heard it. I mean, it could have been a common green shank, pretty similar, but I'm assuming it's a greater yellowlegs.
Jen, he's
so
getting
that-
rarity happy up
That's cool.
No,
there
no,
in Ontario.
Knowing you, Al, it probably was green shank. I mean,
Could have been Nordman's, though. Could have been Nordman's.
Yeah.
You know?
yeah. Who's a reviewer for Ontario?
Oh boy.
Well, you better.
See, I'm
Right
too
on the
new.
spot.
I'm too
You
new
gotta
here.
get used to these
yeah.
people, because you're going to be just
Yeah, like where do I
they're
send
going to
the
be losing their
$20
minds,
bills?
right? Right.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see.
I'll send U.S. money too. So
There you go.
it's a little-
Boat.
$22
I love it.
or something.
Still counts for something.
I love it.
So he's talking about the unique nature of your birding. One of the things I really have sort of marveled over is the rarity finding machine part. People love rarities. People love seeing them, but finding them is actually the most satisfying and the hardest thing to do. Like, are you just, a lot of time in the field? I know you're a great observer. Okay. So there's like a standard set of givens, but still there's a lot of great observers out there that never find, the level or volume of rarities that you have over the years. Is it like you watch the weather, you get a spidey feeling? Do you, or is it just like, oh crap, look at that?
It's a total. All right. So this is one of the most delicious conversations of all time. And I actually was reminiscing just the other night on social media that this is a conversation that I would have on the regular with Doug Gottfeld and Tom Johnson. We'd be up late texting back and forth. What percentage of effort, what percentage of time, what percentage of knowledge versus luck versus skill versus knowledge of the phonology of things moving through? How many pieces and parts does it take to put yourself out there in the most prime possible conditions in order to score a rarity? And I would say the first thing that it always goes back to is knowledge and familiarity of our most abundant and common species. For as many days as I have found rarities, and I found a lot of rarities. I mean, even I'm like, woof, wow, that's wild. I can't even believe that just happened. I mean, over and over again, it's kind of relentless, and it spikes my adrenaline and it just makes me go even harder and harder. But familiarity with our common species, truly watching them, when you have this innate and intense joy and passion for birds in general, when you are just in love with birds, when you just find them to be the most fascinating thing, when you just cannot get enough of them, you're going to truly observe them in a depth that is so invigorating, but also so peaceful. And that mental image and that familiarity with birds, watching thousands and thousands of ring-billed gulls and various plumages flying around, watching thousands and thousands of American robins flying over, so that you have that visual cue: American robin, American robin, American robin, American robin, American robin, not American robin, Townsend solitaire, not American robin, that's hermit thrush, and simultaneously knowing what the possibilities are at any given time. But I really want to bank hard on truly knowing birds is a very, very special, special thing. And when I started out birding, I was quite young. I like to say it was in utero, because all I remember is coming out and being like, I like birds, man. This is great. I want to see some birds. Flipping through field guides.
The binoculars must have hurt during the birth process,
I
It's like,
can't even imagine. I'm
your
adopted,
mom. Oh my
so, my birth mom probably has some stories. I don't know. That's going to be a whole other podcast right there.
Yeah, we'll revisit that later.
Yes, maybe. But, flipping through field guides, just incessant images over and over and over again. So I just cannot say enough about the sheer amount of time spent in the field watching our common birds in flight, watching our common birds' behavior, watching and studying plumages. I mean, you know this, but it's just enough cannot be said about that, because that is going to, just like being able to identify one of your family members or your friends walking from behind in a crowd of people. You're like, oh, I know that. I know that gait. I know that walk.
Yeah, I always thought it's like there's a filter, like a sieve kind of thing, and the holes in the sieve differ depending on how much experience you have, right? You know what I mean? So if you're a beginner, the holes are really big. Townsend solitaire could fly over,
slip right through.
You might not even think that it was something different, because you just don't know yet.
You just don't know yet. Yeah.
And then there's a point in time where that sieve gets smaller and smaller, and anything that goes by, you actually know what it is. So that one time a LeConte sparrow flies in, and you go, oh my God, LeConte sparrow. And people say, how'd you know that? Well, I don't know how I knew it, but there it is, and there it is. And I think that is what you're saying. It's like the time in the field, looking at books, all these hours that, other people were, studying for midterm exams,
Exactly right. That is exactly it.
I mean, and you can do both, but still, like it's overwhelming how much time a birder can spend on birds if you're really into it and just have a good time. And others sometimes don't understand, like, what are you doing? Like you're just rifling through eBird photos. What's the point of that? Well,
and that is a big one right there. When you look up a species on eBird and you look through 6,000 photos of that species, oof. over and over and over again. Oh, that's the best stuff. But I will say this, culturally, we've turned into a chasing society, I think, for the most part. Understandably, because social media allows you to just get an alert. There's this bird. Oh, I've never seen that. I want to go see that. Or that's one of my most wanted. And it sort of lessens overall, I've noticed, the amount of time that people actually spend in the field looking for birds on their own.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you've got folks going out, you get the Patagonia picnic effect, a bunch of people descend on scene, and they're like, oh, there's another rarity. But you'll tend to get these folks who are the rarity finders because they're putting themselves out there for as many times as they find a rare bird. They're also not finding a rare bird.
Right.
But the amount of time invested is key. It's huge.
It is amazing too. I feel like when you're in the zone, and you've found something good, it's like almost as soon as you've kind of registered that you've seen something good, you're like, I need to do that again. Like, it is like you're seeking to recreate that.
Indeed.
Yeah, that adrenaline
Indeed.
rush. Yeah. Yeah, it's like you got to do it,
It's
The
like
chemical
it's like
composition
fishing.
of the thrill is, your synapses and dendrites. Google, folks listening, Google a picture of your synapses and dendrites, and man, they are connected and they're just firing when you get a rare bird. You're like, this is great. Cloud 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember my first yellow rail sighting ever. I remember it was me and my buddy. We'd flushed one in a marsh. We were not expecting it there at all. And we're literally like, we have our hands raised and we're like looking around as though there should be an arena full of people like applauding us.
I can't believe it just happened.
Yeah. We're like, what? It's like out of our minds.
There's another thing that I think a lot of the folks that you're describing, that are having a good time chasing the goodies that are showing up, and the social media and stuff.
Oh, which is a blast. It's
a blast,
Yeah.
It is that sometimes I've had this conversation with folks that are like, they kind of get it, but they don't. And it's kind of the fear of missing out. It goes in two directions. One, for me, for example, I lived in California for decades in the Bay Area, and I never went to Point Reyes during the prime time. And people are like, how could you be so idiotic that you didn't go there during the prime time in the fall? Because every time it was like, what's going to be here around where I live? What's going to be here? What's going to show up? Often there was nothing.
It's prime time here also. Yeah.
It's prime time here. And then there's, for some people, the fear of missing out is you're not at Point Reyes and you're not going to see the goodies. But for me, it was, if I'm over there, I'm not over here. And then I'm not going to see the local goodies, which for me count for a bigger kind of plus, right? Because it's harder to find birds in a place that's not the top place in, all of West Coast, but you're still in a pretty good place.
The FOMO aspect of that is a real thing. Yeah.
And you have to kind of decide where you are.
Yeah. You don't want to be the one that is the outlier. All your friends are over there and they find something today when you're like, I'm going to go over there because I think that's good. But if nobody goes to that other spot, then
what's that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
See, I don't get, my fear of missing out is that I'm not going to be at the right time where I should be, where nobody's going to be.
Right.
If others see good stuff, it's almost like, I don't care. Like, that was great. That's awesome. I want to see the photos. But it's sort of like
I'll never forget the Hurricane Isabel was down at the mouth of the Chesapeake, and like 6 or 8 of us were clustered at this one site, and seabirds are starting to go by. And I'm like, hey, but at that other spot up there, there's nobody. And like, that could be better than where we are right now, or at least there should be somebody there checking. And everyone's looking around like, I'm not going to go.
It's going to be it.
And I go there, and I was like, look, I'm going to go check it out. And I go there, and I arrive, and there's a white-tailed tropic bird just circling. Like,
my
who knows how long I'd have been there for?
Gut instinct.
Yeah. And of course, then everybody rushed over there, and then nobody left that spot the entire rest of the day. So it was sort of like but it was kind of a lesson in that, be a data point. Go someplace nobody else is. See what's there. That's how you really can make real discoveries and valuable contributions too.
Yeah, you've got to make that stand and stick with it. I mean, lake watching, we haven't even talked about, understanding weather, wind directions, how birds are affected by precipitation, how they're affected by fronts coming in days prior or fronts that are coming in the following day. Being able to understand how weather moves birds or birds move with weather, which are actually two different things, is so massive. Understanding departure and arrival dates so massive because it is like clockwork from the majority of each species down to the day. Stilt sandpiper shows up by July 14th, boom, and they do. July 1st, there's typically a willet that shows up in Cleveland, just like clockwork. And if you go to certain spots where willets prefer, people will go, my God, there's a willet. And you're like, indeed, there is a willet. These things have been shown before. It's magic. How did you do that? It's is knowing each individual species, its habitat preferences down to very specific sites. So when you then take into account all of these things and an addiction for local patch birding, you have become so familiar. In my case, it's county birding. So Cuyahoga County, that is my place. I love Cuyahoga County. 331 species of birds I've seen in Cuyahoga County.
And counting.
And counting. That's right. When you know that spot like the back of your hand, you know where the best piers are, the best breakwalls, the best beaches are, where certain species are going to show up in which goldenrod patches. I mean, you can get it down to a science where you can say, I'm going to go here. And I have, based on the weather, based on the date, I have this % chance of seeing this bird. And then when it comes to the more uncommon species, so, movement to jaegers, you can get a really, really quality outlook on your % chance of seeing a jaeger based on wind direction, wind speed, precipitation, whether or not a front's coming through, how strong that front is going to be, if that is a rain front, if that is a sleet front, or if it is going to actually have snow along with it. All of these things combined. Ooh, I'm going to use the ingredients. They are all ingredients that you
In the
must
rare
take
bird
into
soup.
to be a rare bird
Seasoning, if you will.
Seasoning. I like that one. And to where then people think it's magic, but you're like, nope, I am literally taking into account every single ingredient, making the best choice to get myself to a site that offers me highest visibility. And then we let it rip.
Almost.
Right. But we can
indeed.
all make the soup, but Jen has the hot sauce, the special hot sauce.
We can smell what she's cooking.
Man, you've got the spice. Then get out of you both have the spice. You call me rarity-finding machine. You're both out there making it happen. Shoot,
it's
a beautiful
weird.
thing.
It's I mean, because it is, and one part of it kind of, I don't want to, let's just say it. It's kind of meaningless, like rare birds for a lot of people. It's like
But for the finder, it's anything but, right?
But yeah, but there's a lot of aspects of real deep birding that we do as well, right? Like we're out there looking at robins, just going, look at that. This is such a great bird,
Yeah, my dad's favorite bird.
Yeah, and yet it's not like it's one or the other, but the ability to sort of talk rare birds like this is not something you can do with everyone in a sense. And I'm not saying that in a you can do it with a lot of people, but sure. I always wonder how people who are rare bird finders, how they see the whole, how it works for them. Yeah. And it's like, I think there's parallels everywhere. Like you could almost write, like you say, the ingredients are all there, and the ingredients are different if you're on the West Coast versus the Great Lakes versus the East Coast versus the prairies, and the probabilities of finding something unusual are different, and rarity is always local, right? So, there's some, and rarity can be time, right? It's like a rare bird for November. Season. You can always sort of find your way of cataloging what you mean by rare birds. We often are thinking of the big stars, right? Like when hotline thing that goes all around North America, and you're like, woo, but obviously the more local you take it, the different level of rarity that you can kind of put in there, you know?
Right down to your yard.
Yeah, right down to
Exactly.
your yard.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, watching others do big county or state big years, and even knowing, especially when you're doing it in a county, knowing if you've got a large lake, and you're inland, I mean, that's your water source. So you get nonstop precipitation and fog during a prime migration day. You're not going to go to the forest. You're going to go to that lake and you're going to sit there and see what dropped out of the sky. You're going to see if you're going to get, an onslaught of redneck grebes, if you're going to get loons dropping in. But building up that knowledge, people might even ask, well, how do you even know that in the first place? And that is where I would say, even going back again to the sheer amount of time spent out in the field, the research, reading reports, and to a certain extent, understanding that no, a singular, extremely rare bird is not scientifically necessarily important to bird populations, really, whatsoever. I mean, that's an extraneous bird. It's lost, may or may not make it back to population. But understanding, still and wanting to see bird populations recover, boom, having that full depth of just joy for birds is so massive in even understanding how rare birds get here, the mechanisms for how they're going to actually show up on site. So it's everything. Circumference is so necessary.
Yeah, I
they
mean,
tug at people's curiosity, these rare birds. Somebody that may be new to birding is going to be like, fork-tailed flycatcher. Like, why exactly is everybody freaking out about this? What's this bird's deal? They start pulling away at the edges, and before you know it, they're like, I got to go to Mexico or Colombia or Brazil or someplace where I can see a lot of these things.
And they're hooked.
They're hooked. They're forked.
They're forked. Oh, I like that. Yeah. They're just straight up forked for the rest of their life. Yeah, I feel that way.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, it's like a single bird that's rare or vagrant, what have you, is not a big deal. But sometimes they actually start painting a picture. The classic one for all of us is Kirtland's warbler, right? We started out birding when Kirtland's warbler was still super rare, and then it starts getting more common, and then vagrants, or they're not vagrants, they were actually migrants showing up in places they hadn't shown up for 50 years or 80 years, start showing up. People go, oh my God, look at that. And then you're realizing that they're taking a certain habitat, even when they're migrating. They're like, they're kind of this kind of hot, I've seen migrant Kirtlands, and they kind of like in places that look kind of like the Bahamas,
pretty marginal habitat a lot of the time, kind of scrubby, sandy,
dirt on the ground kind of places, kind of a little open, like hard packed, sun packed earth. And you're like, okay, that's like Kirtland's habitat, something about it. I don't know.
Absolutely.
And then they begin to paint a picture till the point that there's a whole bunch of them, and you realize, oh, okay, this is what they do. They're repopulating. This is what they do. Yeah.
Amazing. On the flip side of that, I shouldn't have done really a full stop on the fact that vagrant birds, really scientifically don't matter. The fact is that they do. They are not always outliers. You can tell when some are a total outlier, but often then the patterns that end up coming out of these, these vagrants can oftentimes be significant population shifts. That Limpkin is not a vagrant, obviously, to anywhere in Florida. That is, my God, that is a beloved vagrant that folks are just dying to see in certain spots all over the East. And now that they're popping up in a significant population shift, you think about tropical kingbirds, Couch's kingbirds, and, expanding wintering grounds and
sort of the edge of the storm for some of these birds that are coming.
Indeed, it is,
And the opposite I remember the old timers going to Point Pelee, and they would talk about seeing Bachman sparrows. Oh, it's like an annual at Pelee at the tip, whatever. And it's like, and then they dried up and no more. Done.
Nothing.
Boreal chickadee. Yeah, like boreal chickadee.
Boreal chick,
those used to turn up fairly regularly. south of their range. That just doesn't seem to happen really. There was one like a couple years ago,
But boreal chickadee, the population probably hasn't changed, right?
just the climate more.
Or something. But I think that Bachman sparrows, their populations really dove.
Yeah.
That's why they're,
Yeah.
you know,
Habitat wise.
They're not like they used to be in the north end of the
Right.
range, certainly, and maybe at the
Right.
core of the range further south either.
And, you know, in Philadelphia, where you are, at some point, there were Buick's wrens, right? Like,
Yes.
aren't
I mean,
they-
when I first, my first time in the Pennsylvania Records Committee was in right around 2000, and we were still reviewing Buick's wrens at that point, but they would turn up still. And now they don't turn up anymore.
At all.
Yeah, they're gone.
Which is fascinating because that is a relatively highly adaptable species
Yeah.
that is
Those
hanging
eastern
out along
ones.
fence line
Yeah.
corridors and, you know.
Feels like
That-
these eastern ones should have been split. And to me, I don't know about the genetics, but to me, it feels like the eastern ones, you know, they're reddish. They probably should be split, but it's, you know, but whatever's happened to them is not good. There's not many left.
Yeah.
You probably have to get to western Kansas or something to get to the
Tennessee, I think there's some in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Maybe
So,
Arkansas.
Interesting, though, how, you know, even with our lifetimes, you know, so many changes have happened. And, you know, we've talked about coming back here, and there's so many species now that are like common. They used to be rare. Raven, there's more fish crow records, all these things that are happening, a lot of change. And you think, okay, I guess change is always happening. You know, like we think it's like something special because, you know, we're messing around with the environment, but I bet it was always happening, nevertheless, kind of thing. There was
Right.
no static aspect of distributions ever. And, but it's cool to be part of the people who are kind of like experiencing this. You
And
know, it's
seeing
like,
what the
it's
change
fun.
is.
Yeah.
Like, even if you know there's
Yeah.
going to be change, you don't know what the change is going to
You
be.
don't know exactly what it is, right?
Right.
It's one of the most phenomenal parts about birding becoming just so beloved and so popular is getting almost an absolutely constant update via social media or, you know, any other easy to access outlet of what is happening continent wide, worldwide, you know, to a lot of bird populations, to a lot of habitats. And it definitely is going to be increasingly fascinating to watch, to see how weather affects bird populations, because obviously weather right now has intensified, how temperatures affect. And, you know, a lot of people sort of just end there. They get stuck when they go, oh my God, I don't even want to think about that. There are so many things you can do to help monitor all of the additional aspects of birds' lives. A lot of people think, well, how can I help birds? And they're just thinking about birds themselves as a physical being. But when you think about birds even more in depth, you know, you need to be thinking about their habitats, their food requirements. So if they are, you know, macroinvertebrate specialists, if they're caterpillar specialists, if they're nectar specialists, and really just thinking bigger picture. When you start really looking at those things, then you can just really push your own scale of knowledge out, get into being able to identify trees, identify native wildflowers, getting into identifying insects, so that your awareness for everything that encompasses birds in general just grows and grows and grows. People always say, well, how do you learn more about birds? And it'd be the same thing as learning more about your mom, your dad, your uncle, you know, your sister, your brother. You ask the questions, you learn more about, you know, their way of living and their natural history even more in depth. And we have that at our fingertips. We have not just eBird, we have iNaturalist and other applications that we can just pour over and build our knowledge to truly understand it.
Yeah.
I do think I really gotten into plants in the last couple years, more so than ever before. But part of the reason I did was because I think I started to realize that I actually knew some plants already. Like I was sort of like I found myself saying like, well, you know, here when you see the little conch sparrows, they tend to be in the broom sedge, you know, or, you know, the tanagers really seem to like the viburnum. And then I was like, and you start pulling at that, and then you start getting into the bugs that like those plants as well. And you put it all together, and then you start thinking about, well, the reason the tanagers like the viburnums because they're attracting bees, and they like eating the bees. And it really does, when it comes time to trying to locate something that might not supposed to be there, maybe isn't supposed to be there, it suddenly becomes a little easier because you're like kind of taking shortcuts that way.
Absolutely. More ingredients.
Yeah.
More spice. More hot sauce. More soup.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Jen Brumfield experiences was, I don't know if you remember, Jen, when we did the Spearfish, North Dakota trip, for the ABA, American Birding Association rally. This must have been, I think it was like 2014 or something like that. And I just remember you and I had a field trip. I don't remember what the field trip was, but I remember we drove past this airport where there was it was a small airport, just like for small craft. And they had like these little
flat,
kind of
grassy areas, huh?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Good out there for those. And there were kind of these like white cones that were kind of scattered about. And as I'm driving along, I'm like, I don't know why, but this kind of reminds me of like a little marsh full of jabberoos.
They looked exactly like them.
And at that moment, Jen calls on the radio and she goes, "Hey, George, doesn't that field look like a field full of jabberoos?" And I was like, "No way!" I was literally thinking that this very second, and I felt like no one else could have understood that in either of our vehicles, But I felt like the bird finders, the bird seekers in us saw that pattern, and we both recognized it, despite the fact that there are indeed no records of jabiru in North Dakota. Yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that the shapes were even, it's not like they were full-blown shapes too. Just the way that those images were patterned and sitting around looked exactly like what you would expect to see. It was, But that moment when we were both thinking the same thing in different cars, was wild.
That's your sort of auto recognition that you've trained your brain to do, right? And then
pattern recognition.
You see the right thing, and you just, you give it a name immediately, Jabiru, right? And boom. In the right context, people will be like, "How'd you know that?" It's like, well, I don't know. Look at them. I don't know. And it is an I don't know, right? Because if you had just sat there, stopped, and other than being white, and maybe you could break it down to what it was, but you didn't have that time to think about that when you first saw it. You probably saw them in a millisecond and thought Jabiru. Right? Your brain just goes there because it knows things, right?
Yeah, that you don't even know it knows.
Right?
Yeah.
For, that kind of brings you to like when folks actually ask, well, then what can I do? I want to find more rarities. I want to find more uncommon species. Or how are you picking these birds out? How can you look through a flock of Bonaparte's gulls and 10 minutes later be like, yeah, there's first cycle little gull in there, and there's this over here, this over here, this over here. A lot of folks will sort of stand there and maybe be overwhelmed by the sheer volume. And I'll go back to, the things that are available to us for studying in today's world. And we were mentioning, Al, did you bring it up earlier, or George? Pop an open eBird, type it in a species. You have thousands. Now, obviously, some of them are incorrect identifications. But overall, with all the reviewers working simultaneously together and working hard, if you type in Bonaparte's gull and say there's 8,000 images, well, the majority of those are going to be Bonaparte's gull. But clicking through those images and not just these beautiful pictures that you find, that people are posting on their Facebook, like, look at this lovely image of a rose-breasted grosbeak. You want a backlit image of a rose-breasted grosbeak with its head
check those
half
1-star and 2-star photos as well.
1-star, 2-star, 3-star photos. Because that is what birds look like in the field.
Avoid all Dorian Anderson photography.
Get out of here, Dorian.
Yeah, it's like
Shut them down.
just I mean, you
Yeah,
can't learn.
useless.
I mean,
Useless, those
useless.
images.
You
Yeah.
see every feather. Who cares? I want to see no feathers.
Yeah. No feathers. Yeah, you should be getting the worst possible look at a bird of all time and rejoicing
Yeah.
because you know that dusky little speck, you know what that is, you know. But yeah, I mean, that's why going out into those weather fronts, you know, you need to expect that you are going to be looking for sometimes, yes, a lot of different field marks, but sometimes a very, very few couple of field marks. So people oftentimes get overwhelmed and they get their head in a book and they're trying to check that, oh my God, and it did have this, and this. Becoming so familiar with your local species really ends up kind of bringing you down to this point where if you're looking through 8,000 Bonaparte's gulls, there's really a couple things you're looking for in that flock of 8,000 Bonaparte's gulls. You should already have that white wedge memorized on the upper wing. You should already have that pale under edge to the, to the wings memorized. You should know there's 2 black spots on the side of the head. The adults are, that gray mantle, gray wings, except for that white chevron mark on the forewing. That should be ingrained in there. And then you're just letting your brain go straight down the line, just right down the line.
I think too, like when people don't realize that when you tell them that something is smaller, right? When you tell them a little gull is smaller than a Bonaparte's gull, they think, okay, but they don't realize that that's going to make it appear different in its movements as well. And you see it also with like storm petrels, like if you're out at sea and you're looking at storm petrels, all of a sudden a larger bandrumped or leeches goes by, off the East Coast, and you've been looking at Wilsons, and Wilsons kind of flutter along looking like swallows. All of a sudden you see a slightly larger one, and it's just mostly gliding because it is bigger, You're the, that.
Is that your dogs, Al?
My dogs and my friend's dogs, there's like 6 dogs.
Oh my God.
That's
wow.
great.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that the movement is also a big thing. There's some proverb, I forget how it goes exactly, but it's like, it says something like, and this speaks to your point, Jen, about being around these birds that are the common ones and getting to know the common ones. They say the proverb is something like, don't study something, spend time around it. And I think that's like kind of what you get with like when you're going through flocks of gulls. You're basically looking, you're saying, okay, all this looks the same, all this looks the same, all this looks the same. What's that? Like you're like, all of a sudden you're being like, that one looks different. And then you have to decide, is it really different? And if it,
I am suddenly just thinking we've done, I don't know how many episodes of this, but I think that's the first
I love
time.
it when you suddenly think, Al.
Yeah, this is his first proverb. He's not done proverbs before. Like George's first
deep.
proverb, like I don't know what's happening next.
And this is coming from Nostradamus, so they're trusting. There's more to come. Yeah.
Well, Al, now you got to come up with a proverb.
Oh, God!
My God.
Such pressure. One who seeks, you can see.
One who seeks rarities shall find them eventually.
That was beautiful.
Sorry, that was another one of mine. Al, you'll have to just keep working on your own.
Keep working on my own stuff. Yeah,
God, I love it. But yeah, you can pinpoint down to. I'm sure you can do this, George, too. For certain days on the East Coast, certain days on the West Coast. But I mean, we have Jaeger weather. So we have specific dates when we know that Sabin's gulls and parasitic, long-tailed Pomeranian Jaegers are going to show up, when black terns show up, when redneck phalaropes are going to be out on Lake Erie. And one of the reasons why I start up those boat trips, I won't even call them pelagics. After all the years of calling them pelagics, it's so wrong. They're not pelagics. They're just boat trips out onto Lake Erie. But we know they're out there. They're out there annually, not in big numbers, but what then brings them to shore. So for lake watching, you truly can predict certain wind directions as north-northwest winds to northwest winds or west-northwest winds at certain speeds, and then using a variety of different apps to take a look at wind speeds coming up then over the next couple of days, the way that fronts are coming down and through. It is not rocket science, and it's awesome that it's not rocket science. It's delicious that it's not, because I hope that more and more people can jump onto these things, download these different apps where they're able to look at the same weather systems coming in at a certain time of the year and go, you know what? I'm going to post up at this lakefront site and I'm going to watch for Jaegers too, because all those, again, ingredients coming together, it works. When then they come through and you've got a shot at it,
Yeah, the only Jaegers I've seen in Philadelphia, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, doing a lot of river watches and here on the Delaware River. And I think part of our issue for Jaegers in particular is kind of coastal hiatus. Like, I think by the time they get here, they can see the ocean, and they're like, I'm not going to stop there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
I'm going to go out there.
Yeah, I'm going to just go out there, and they just zip over. But every now and then, like super rare, it'll happen. But I do remember Hurricane Sandy, which was arguably the most exciting birding day definitely the most exciting birding day of my life here in Philadelphia. And I arrived, I think I'd had a rather bleary-eyed night the night before. And even anticipating that this was going to be an amazing birding day, I still somehow ended up being later than Tom Johnson and Doug Gotchfeld to the river. I got there and immediately parasitic Jaegers just like drifting by on the water, super close. That's really the only Jaeger I have seen here in Philadelphia. But I'm curious, Jen, when you're looking at, like, you're somebody who sees Jaegers in a variety, all three species, right? In a variety of different circumstances, on the boat, standing on shore, scanning with bins, seeing distant birds. And Al, you do this a lot too. I actually don't do it as much. Like, I see them often on pelagic trips off the East Coast, but not as often as you guys do. And on Alaska, they're all in breeding plumage and pretty easy. I'm curious, like, if you're like standing on the shore of Lake Erie, seeing a distant Jaeger, what are the first things you look for to separate each of the three species?
Let's talk about Jaegers. Oh, this is good. This is good.
They're tough, especially the youngsters. I feel like the youngsters are especially tough.
All right, I'll let it rip. So, for Great Lakes region, particularly for Southern Great Lakes region, there are certain dates that they don't always work. I mean, we've had early palms, like surprisingly early palms, but for the most part, we know that at the beginning of Jaeger season, our higher chances are going to be parasitic than long-tailed as a possibility. We now know, and parasitic Jaeger used to be a hardcore review species in Ohio. I mean, it was hardly anybody had seen parasitic Jaeger in the state. Well, now, we're seeing some days, half a dozen or a dozen of them. And a lot of that is because we now, know where to look. Again, that was years ago until people started lake watching and then getting out on boats. But in late August and in September, parasitic Jaeger is going to be our most likely species. And that trends across the Great Lakes in general. For all of us, long-tailed Jaeger is going to be more uncommon. And then typically it's standard that palm Jaeger is going to be overall a little bit later in the season, just based on, their departure and arrival times. And so we know entering into Jaeger season that we're going to highly expect parasitic first, and we're going to assume parasitic first, really. We're going to let our mental note just go, you're going to have to convince yourself this is not a parasitic Jaeger. And I think that's very realistic. That's good birding. The expected species. When you're out there going, is that a long-tailed? Is that a long-tailed? Is that a long-tailed? You're wasting time. You're already with that thought wasting time. So mechanically,
and maybe steering yourself in the wrong direction.
Looking for things that aren't actually there, that can happen as well.
Slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope. But, parasitic Jaeger looks so much like a slender peregrine falcon to me at a distance. And I mean, this is a ways out. Kind of a peregrine / merlin, kind of those species combined. Long-tailed Jaeger really looks like a nighthawk to me. This is where you start getting into buoyancy of flight, laziness of flight, which of course changes at any time depending on if they're on a chase or not, if they're riding winds or not, if it's a calm day. But overall, from seeing these species over and over and over and over and over again, you kind of get this familiarity with how powerful is this bird, even a young bird that's, a little bit lazier, a little
How
more
much weight is it
lackadaisical.
moving?
How much weight is that bird moving? And can it really start cooking? And also your familiarity with your common species that are also going to be out on the lake simultaneously. So, typically there's ring-billed gulls, herring gulls, possibly Bonaparte's gulls, Forster's terns, common terns around. And you're looking at this larger picture. You're in the matrix. You're not just looking at one species honing in. You're in this beautiful matrix. And so you're taking into account all of these things. So on the day you're actually Jaeger watching, you're looking at distance to target. You're looking at species surrounding that bird. So you're constantly looking to see are ring-billed gulls around or herring gulls around. Is that a ringer? Is that a herring? You're looking at wind direction, wind speed to see how they're actually fighting it and what they look like when they're fighting it. And you're taking into account all of those things to where you do end up getting that ridiculous phrase we love so much, GIS of birds, the GISS, general impression, shape, and size, alongside looking furiously for the field marks, that you really want to try to nail down. It is extraordinarily wise, particularly when you're lake watching during tough weather, to let some of those species go. You're just not doing, or some of those individuals go. You're not doing yourself any favors. And in reality, you're not looking cool, but trying to plant a name on every single dot out there.
Yeah.
There are, a series of field marks, young long-tailed Jaeger, including this sort of lemony goldenish cowl on the bird, that stubby little head, the dainty little bill.
I love the straw-headed ones. Those
Straw, yeah. What did I call it? Golden cowl. Yeah, that's straw. Oh my God, it's amazing. Just sort of an even-keeled look to being more narrow. And there's a way that they fly. Those are things that you have to study. You've got to study those things, I know Al's dying to jump in.
Yeah, we have a real context. Well, I mean, we thinking now like of when we're out in pelagics and seeing them from shore, also in the West Coast. I'll get reacquainted with the Great Lakes version, but there's some things that actually, like, sort of knowing what you can be looking for is important, right? Here that there's the prime time for long-tailed Jaegers is that sort of early July into, sort of when they start showing up really heavily is August.
Mm-hmm.
And by about mid-September, they're kind of done, right? For in the West Coast, Pomeranian Jaegers got the broadest spread, because they're actually relatively common. So, knowing when is sort of the peak time for longtails is useful. The other thing is, in the West, you never, ever, ever, ever see a juvenile Pomeranian. Zilch. Zero. So,
Wow.
I know. So you see them on the Great Lakes. You see them, I guess, on the East Coast. But so if it's a bird that's an actual juvenile, sort of the dark kind of deal with, sort of fresh plumage, I've never seen one on the West Coast, Pomeranian, zero. I don't know if they go later than anybody ever is out there. Are they flying through in December? I don't know, but you don't see them. The other thing is, you're seeing a bird that's in obvious wing molt in like July, August, September, it's always a Pomeranian. Those are not juveniles, right? So just kind of stepping back for people, juvenile birds don't do their molt in the first fall and so forth. So if they're molting at that time of year, it's always a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, or adult Pomeranian. And it makes sense because they don't migrate as far south. They're much more sort of tropical, or even may remain in the northern hemisphere as winterers, while the longtails all go way down south to Chile, Peru, and a lot of the parasitics are going down south, way south as well. So that they delay their molt. So anytime I see a molting bird and I call it out as a Pomeranian, and people say, "How'd you know that?" "Oh, I saw the gap." And is that work all the time? Yeah. It works most of the time. There are some parasitics that actually molt a little earlier, and you got to have little filters. But there's some things like that are really useful. To me, juvie if there's like a juvenile jaeger and it looks rusty, like it's got a reddish tone to it, parasitic. It's like you
That's
don't
Paja all the
see-
way.
Yeah, you don't see rusty looking longtails. They have a kind of grayer, yellower, buffy tones, often pale-headed look, right, in the juvies, not always. There are some real tricks, though, that these birds throw up on, like throw you, like dark morph long-tailed Jaegers don't exist as adults, but they do exist as
youngsters.
birds.
Yeah.
And there's
Are there still no
one-year-olds and
photos of dark morph?
two-year-olds.
Are there still no photos of dark morph adult longtails? I thought there might be some by now.
Question.
Well, they're so rare that
Yeah.
is it actually a dark morph or is
like
it
something
actually
melanistic
a
or something?
melanistic? You know,
Right, right.
So I mean,
Yeah.
there's like a
Right. You don't know.
You can see 2-year-old, 1-year-old, old dark Jaeger that a lot of people go, well, that can't be a longtail. It's dark, and you're like, look at it closely. That's a longtail, and those things can throw you for a loop because you can have a mindset, of some things shouldn't exist, but they do for that period of time, and they can throw you for a loop. I love your falcon kind of deal with the parasitics. To me, I always say it's like a small gull crossed with a falcon.
That's what I always say.
Almost
It's like
like
you
a
took them together
hobby,
and smushed them together. You have a falcon and a
Yeah.
gull, and you got yourself a parasitic.
And
Yeah.
I tend to think of Pomeranians looking more like just kind of more gull-like. Like,
Yeah. Almost like
you
a
know.
skua.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like true skua.
True skua. And then long-tailed has like a tern-like kind of look to it. Like it's lighter,
Delicate.
more. Yeah. And they sometimes can look real thick build, right? They can actually look like you're thinking, oh, crap, that can't be a long-tailed because it doesn't have a dainty bill. But it's got a short bill enough that it looks thick, right? So then I've learned that bit. So if the bird seems to have this sort of slender, long bill, it's actually a parasitic. It's like, because it looks slender because it's long.
Proportionally, exactly.
Yeah, proportion. They tend to have a bigger head. Longtails tend to fly higher off the water. I don't know why. I don't know if they're just booting it. They're migrating. So when I'm seeing them and they're just like going, or are they like up higher because they're looking for smaller turns to go and buzz? I don't know.
Or maybe they're trying to avoid getting buzzed themselves and they take the high ground.
Yeah.
Around here, it's like if you along the coast, like if you're anywhere right on the coast, if you see a Jaeger, it's like probably 98% chance or something that it's a parasitic Jaeger. Like if you're on the beach and you're seeing a Jaeger, and typically if we're talking September, October, November, even December, they're regular migrants. You see them pretty routinely. And so any other Jaeger around here is pretty unusual. But if you're, say, here in Philadelphia or inland from here and you see a Jaeger, all of a sudden it's like, well, it's probably not a parasitic, actually. You're probably looking at a long-tailed or a Pomeranian. And which one is more likely is debatable. And it's like, then if you get, if you're on a pelagic, probably more likely a parasitic. Once you get a little further out, you can run into palms. But then if you're really far out, and this is kind of what made me think of it, Alice, when you're talking about that they fly, longtails fly higher. Once you get to like around here, once you get like, 60, 70 miles out or more, and you see a Jaeger, odds are it's a longtail. You could get other Jaegers out there. And season is big too. Around here, you're basically looking at late May, early June, or August and early September for longtails. Usually they're not seen outside those months, but that's my favorite one. Longtails like this the best.
Yeah. The other thing is, to me, if you're chumming, Jen, I don't know how much you guys do a bunch of chumming on the Great Lakes or not.
We used to. We were. Oh yeah, we would get tons of discarded walleye and perch heads, and it was great. We don't anymore. We went for speed over chum.
Speed over chum. I like that.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. That's a T-shirt you need to make.
That's
Jen.
a T-shirt. Speed over chum. So.
Oh man, yeah. Watch, there's gonna be hats, bumper stickers, shirts. Watch, speed over chum.
Speed over chum. So.
Can't wait.
If you're chumming. One of the things I found is like if you have a big block of chum, that's just floating around, long-tailed Jaegers will sometimes often come, like they smell it, see it or whatever, and they just sit and feed at it. Like they feed. And you're like, oh, okay, they're feeding like a regular bird, like a regular seabird. Parasitic jaegers chase the birds that have eaten the chum. So
Aptly
like
named.
parasitics are actually like they're even though it's easy food, they could go there and pick it. No, I want to chase for my food.
They have to
That's
chase.
what I do.
Yeah.
True
the
pirates.
chase.
True pirates,
Yeah.
those guys.
The chase is better than the catch, as they say in the parasitic world. So they and you can see this. You can see a bird chasing, like going crazy, chasing in the distance. And my thought goes to, I think that's a parasitic. That thing is intense. And if you get like two of them chasing and they're just going
That
nuts,
can be a ton of fun to watch.
you know, yeah, just
That's insane
parasitic.
when that happens.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And their Pomeranians are bigger. They're not as agile, so they tend to just drop down on something and like hit it over the head and,
Right. They're more brutes.
and get their food. They're brutes. That finesse of chasing doesn't happen that much.
Yeah.
Longtails often just pick stuff off the water and they will chase, but they're just not as
They're
do
not
it
very
all the time.
Jaegery.
They have a lot
They're
more
not very
dignity.
Jaegery. Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
dignity. Delicateness. That reminds me of Brandon Holden would go out on, he probably still does, but he'd go out on a tiny, tiny little boat right off of Hamilton. And he'd get these ridiculous photos of long-tailed Jaegers just lofting over his craft, his watercraft, coming down to just sort of pick at things, like you said, Al, to just kind of saunter in the water. Yeah, they're very, very delicate and very non-Jaegery.
Mm-hmm.
They're a fascinating species. Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you get down to South America in the wintering areas, or at least in the migratory areas, you find like parasitic jaegers are where the terns are because they're chasing terns. That's how they make their living. I think we don't often see longtails in most places in the wintering areas because they're way offshore, away from where the terns are, just doing their own fishing. I think they're just they're finding food floating on the water, or, little fish and this and that. Maybe they hang out near other birds that are successful fishing birds and get scraps. So they are not Jaegery in that respect. And I kind of don't understand Pomeranian as much in a sense. Like they're kind of a little bit more of an enigma to me, even though I see a lot of them. I don't often see them chasing that much. And
they'll give like a 1-2 punch. They'll come in sort of B-52, more straight line, fewer psychotic swirls.
Yeah.
They'll give it a go, but then they'll go down and sit. And then when they do raise up again, they'll give it like a 1-2 go, but they're not doing, this out there.
A lot like a South Polar skua or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, skua will come in and almost like just come really bold, and it'll actually do a little wing flap before it sort of says, I'm here. And you see this kind of like it's as if, a little flash. And then everybody's like, oh, we're out. Cause
chaos.
Like,
no, thanks. We're done.
Right.
So yeah.
The bouncers here.
The bouncers.
Yeah. The marauders. That's what I was calling them. Marauders.
The Bonksy.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get offshore. There's various methods we've taken over the years to do these boat trips offshore. And each one works beautifully. I started out using Fisherman's Wharf out of Port Clinton with Captain Tim, and he's got several head boats, and they're a little larger. These are perch walleye boats, not necessarily built for speed, although they've got some speed to them, but more so just larger for a larger number of people to jump on board and get the experience. We started out of Vermilion, Ohio, which is a central basin of Lake Erie. And, I chose the dates that it makes sense for those individual species to be coming through. We covered mad amount of miles, and we've got a high percentage rate chance of finding these Jaegers and Sabin's gulls now, and black terns, and now redneck phalaropes. Now we've got a boat that is, so like I said, we want speed over chum. So this boat can just fly, and it'll put us right alongside these Jaegers. I mean, to where they're at your arm's reach away. We could chase, Sabin's gulls down to where they're parallel out to the boat and get great photos of them. And, a lot of these are it's sort of a newer science for birding in the state. And I know that they're doing these, on Lake Michigan as well. Brandon Holden and others have been doing them on Lake Ontario, getting on boats, going out, seeing what's out there on the calm days, because they're out there. They're out there just drifting and fishing and staging. It is an absolute blast. I mean, there is nothing like flying along beside a jaeger.
What do you think they're doing? So you can tell that they're going to show up because of the weather, and it implies to me that these birds are just flying over like hundreds of miles, kilometers over land, going like maybe from Hudson's Bay down somewhere on the Atlantic coast, or maybe even all the way through to the Gulf Coast. And some of them are just booting it, and they're not going to stop. Maybe like a shorebird. Is that what you think is happening? And when the weather hits, some of them just drop out into the lake?
Yes, I think some of them drop out.
The lake? Do you think, or do you think they actually know the lake is there and they're going to use the lake no matter what, then feed and then go? Or like, what are they doing? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it's twofold, and I think they take advantage given what weather system is actually coming through ahead of or behind them. I think it is, for a lot of birds, it is a massive stopover site. I think that, we know that a lot of these routes are genetically kept within the minds of these young birds. That's how they're navigating to these spots where they've, not been before, and they're doing it solo. So genetically, the material to navigate the Great Lakes is there, and they're seeing that large body of water, and other water birds are there. Their food types are there, so they're staging there. Whether or not they do, or if they keep on going, would be whatever prevailing winds and how strong those winds are behind them, and whether or not there's precipitation. But I think on average, they are absolutely staging there. And then a lot of birds would take advantage of just a straight shot flight down to the Gulf, or a lot of them are going to reservoir hop and lake hop their way down. And I think, is that adult versus juvenile, whether or not they're going to reservoir and river and lake hop their way down? A lot of the times during September, people are not checking inland reservoirs as much. They're going out to more mud flats. They're going out to coastal areas or migrant traps looking for warblers, vireos, thrushes, passerines. They're not set up shop at a lot of these inland reservoirs going, all right, if it rains, I got a decent shot at a jaeger. But I think that's catching on a little bit as we're getting more and more inland records of Sabin's gull, long-tailed jaeger, palm jaeger, and parasitic. But I think it's twofold, Al. I really do. I think that whatever quote-unquote decision is made on what day that bird is passing over the region is going to depend on how long their previous flight was, whether or not they need to rest up and refuel energy level wise, what precipitation is happening, and what prevailing winds are behind them. And in that split second, they're going to make that decision to track further or not,
Yeah.
I do, you've seen these like cameras where they've got like on like the back of golden eagles or whatever.
Yeah. I love it.
Jaeger cam?
Yes. I want a long-tailed Jaeger cam someday just to see this journey.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody needs to do that.
Yeah, exactly. We need
How about if we find out that they actually like find a flock of Canada geese and actually just crimp on?
Actually ride the back of a goose.
Yeah, ride the back of a goose. It's like scientifically unproven, but
I don't want that to happen, Al.
That would be disappointing. That would be disappointing. Yeah.
If these amazing birds were just on a goose.
Listen, guys, we could. I feel like we should have gone to the Jaeger part of this conversation sooner, but yeah, we are an hour plus deep here. Jen, we are going to have you back if
barely talked about big years and
anything.
And planting native plants and things you can do, and
I know we had a whole outline. Remember, we all knew that we were not going to adhere to it.
We haven't even let it rip. Like we didn't even get goofy yet.
Right.
Al didn't crack the beer.
I know, we're a disgrace.
I know. I mean, that's next we got to do this soon.
Yeah.
Because I have questions. Yeah.
Well, it's still, we still got time. It's July.
That's right. Yeah. Let's hit again once Jaeger season. After you get your first Jaeger, then we need to Yeah, we need to circle back.
Jaeger, can you call it Jaeger time?
Yeah, exactly.
Jaeger-
Yeah, some Jaegermeister for each of us. It'll be good. Yeah.
Jaeger.
Well,
Is that-
thanks.
I'll still repeating it.
Thanks so much for doing this, Jen. Really, really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Always value time talking to you. And thanks everybody for listening. We will be back again soon with another episode of Life List. Cheers, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.